The 1960s marked an unprecedented explosion in American automotive culture, and at the heart of it all was the rise of the muscle car, a category of vehicles designed to deliver enormous power, aggressive styling, and affordable speed for the everyday consumer. Detroit's Big Three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, were locked in a ruthless competition to produce the fastest, most thrilling cars, giving birth to icons such as the Pontiac GTO, Chevelle SS, Plymouth Road Runner, Dodge Charger, and the Ford Mustang. These cars were not just vehicles. They were statements, embodying the spirit of rebellion, youthful freedom, and the thrill of the open road. They came equipped with massive V8 engines capable of producing horsepower that, for the average person, was previously unimaginable. The styling was bold and unapologetic. Long hoods, short rear decks, wide stances, and often menacing grills signal raw performance even before the engine roared to life. By the late 1960s, muscle cars had become more than transportation. They were cultural icons, appearing in movies, magazines, and on racetracks, representing the ultimate expression of speed and power. Enthusiasts across the country flocked to dealerships, eager to claim their slice of automotive heaven. Car clubs and street races flourished as communities bonded over performance modifications and head-to-head competitions, fueling a subculture obsessed with power, torque, and acceleration. At the same time, the automotive industry itself had reached a technological tipping point. Engineers were pushing engines to new extremes, experimenting with performance parts, fuel delivery systems, and suspension setups that were far beyond what most road cars had previously offered. Yet, beneath this golden age of horsepower and chrome, cracks were forming in the foundation of the industry. Governments were beginning to take note of the dangers inherent in these high-powered machines. Highway fatalities and street racing incidents were rising, and safety advocates began to call for stricter regulations. Insurance companies, faced with skyrocketing claims for accidents involving these vehicles, started to implement prohibitive premiums, particularly targeting younger drivers, the very demographic most drawn to muscle cars. Meanwhile, environmental concerns and looming fuel shortages were quietly shifting public and regulatory priorities. Despite this brewing storm, manufacturers continued to push the envelope, each new model more extreme than the last, feeding the appetite for speed and spectacle. And then came the car that would redefine the meaning of excess in the muscle car world. It wasn't just fast, it was monstrous. Its engine output shattered all expectations. Its design was aggressively radical, and its performance was considered borderline reckless by even the most die-hard enthusiasts. When it arrived on the scene, it immediately became a symbol of everything the muscle car era represented: freedom, rebellion, and mechanical audacity. But this car didn't exist in a vacuum. Its very existence amplified every concern that critics, regulators, and insurers had been harboring. Its outrageousness in both performance and design made it the focal point of a growing backlash, the ultimate poster child for what muscle cars could become at their most extreme. This wasn't just a new model. It was a seismic event that would alter the course of the industry, a car so powerful, so excessive, that it unwittingly set the stage for the dramatic transformation of an entire generation of American automobiles. When this car finally hit the streets, it didn't just arrive. It announced itself like a rolling thunderclap, shaking the automotive world to its core. Its engine was a marvel of engineering excess, a colossal V8 that produced numbers previously thought unattainable for a street-legal vehicle. With every press of the accelerator, it unleashed raw, unfiltered power, catapulting its driver from zero to speeds that made ordinary muscle cars look pedestrian by comparison. The sheer audacity of the machine was reflected in every curve and contour of its body. Aerodynamic enhancements, oversized hood scoops, flared fenders, and a wide, menacing stance all screamed performance. The design wasn't subtle or elegant. It was aggressive, almost predatory, as if the car itself was daring the world to challenge it. It didn't merely compete with other muscle cars. It obliterated the competition on paper and on the street, leaving every other model in its shadow. Enthusiasts were ecstatic. Drag strips became arenas where this car dominated without mercy, its monstrous torque and explosive acceleration leaving rivals fumbling in its wake. Street racers and car clubs hailed it as the pinnacle of American muscle, a machine built for those who wanted to experience speed in its purest, most unrelenting form. Its popularity soared among those who sought adrenaline and spectacle above all else. But this extreme performance came at a cost. Lawmakers, insurers, and safety advocates immediately took notice, and the car quickly became a lightning rod for criticism. Politicians painted it as reckless, dangerous, and emblematic of everything wrong with the muscle car movement. Insurance companies raised premiums astronomically, making the car, and by extension, other high-powered muscle cars, financially prohibitive for young drivers. It became a symbol of excess, the ultimate example used to justify regulatory intervention. Even more, the car's arrival coincided with societal and economic pressures that magnified its impact. The oil crises of the 1970s loomed just over the horizon, making fuel-hungry, high-horsepower engines targets of scrutiny. Environmental concerns were rising and emission standards began to tighten, signaling that such extreme vehicles were increasingly incompatible with the direction the country was moving. Yet, despite all warnings, the car didn't compromise. It pushed harder, faster, louder, and more aggressively than any muscle car that had come before. Its very existence challenged the industry. It demanded engineers push limits. It demanded insurers raise rates. And it demanded regulators create new rules. This car wasn't just another competitor in the muscle car market. It was the embodiment of everything that had made the era exhilarating, dangerous, and unsustainable all at once. It became the ultimate benchmark for excess. And in doing so, forced the industry, government, and public to confront the consequences of extreme horsepower. Enthusiasts celebrated its audacity, while critics decried it as a rolling catastrophe waiting to happen. And in this dichotomy of admiration and fear, the car established itself as the central figure in a transformation that would forever alter the trajectory of American muscle cars. Its performance wasn't just impressive. It was disruptive, unavoidable, and undeniable, marking the moment when the muscle car industry faced the full force of the consequences of its own ambition. The release of this monstrous machine didn't just make waves. It sent shockwaves that rippled through every corner of the automotive world, exposing vulnerabilities in the muscle car ecosystem that had long been ignored. Insurance companies, alarmed by the car's sheer power and the corresponding rise in claims, began targeting high-performance vehicles with draconian premiums. Suddenly, owning a muscle car was no longer simply a matter of taste or desire. It became a financial burden that few could justify. Young drivers, the lifeblood of the muscle car market, were priced out of the equation entirely, creating a gap in the demographic that had fueled the industry's growth for over a decade. Dealerships, which had thrived on the demand for these high-powered machines, began to feel the pressure as sales forecasts were adjusted downward to account for the newly unattainable insurance costs. The excitement that had once surrounded muscle cars began to waver under the weight of economic reality. At the same time, regulators seized upon the car as the perfect example of the dangers posed by excessive horsepower and unbridled automotive ambition. Lawmakers and federal agencies, already concerned about rising accident rates and environmental impact, now had a concrete target, a single vehicle that exemplified everything that could go wrong on the road. Its existence justified stricter emission standards, fuel efficiency mandates, and safety regulations that would apply to the entire industry. The extreme performance of this vehicle, which enthusiasts had celebrated, became ammunition for policymakers seeking to curtail what they deemed irresponsible engineering. Even automotive journalists, who had once glorified the muscle car era with ecstatic reviews of speed and power, could not ignore the controversy. Magazines and newspapers debated whether such vehicles were a triumph of engineering or a ticking time bomb, further fueling public perception that the industry was veering out of control. The oil crises of the era compounded the problem, placing additional scrutiny on gas-guzzling engines and reinforcing the message that the era of unlimited horsepower was unsustainable. Muscle cars, once celebrated as symbols of freedom and rebellion, were suddenly framed as impractical, dangerous, and environmentally irresponsible. Manufacturers found themselves caught in a perfect storm. Consumer demand for performance was clashing with regulatory restrictions, rising costs, and changing societal priorities. The monster car, which had been designed to push limits and dominate the streets, became the poster child for the industry's excesses. Its dominance on drag strips and highways was no longer celebrated. It was feared, criticized, and cited as evidence that muscle cars had grown too extreme for the times. Yet, the impact of this vehicle extended far beyond economics and regulation. It reshaped the very culture of American muscle cars. It highlighted the inherent risks of designing machines that prioritize speed and spectacle over balance, safety, and sustainability. Enthusiasts admired it, competitors feared it, and policymakers used it as a case study in excess. In doing so, it effectively shifted the conversation about performance cars from one of excitement and innovation to one of caution and constraint. Its legacy was monumental, not in decline or disappearance, but in the seismic influence it had while it roared across the streets and tracks of America. The monster car didn't just dominate the market, it disrupted it, exposing the vulnerabilities of an entire industry and forcing every stakeholder, from manufacturers to drivers to regulators, to confront the consequences of pushing engineering to its absolute extreme. In that sense, it was both a marvel and a warning. A machine whose very existence reshaped the trajectory of American muscle cars forever.